All right, we're in, my brother. Holy hell, e te whānau. Welcome back to the Planting Seeds podcast here up in Tāmaki, and our next guest is someone who is usually behind the cam. He's the one who is telling the story. He is the one who is creating the narrative, and, you know, we've been all privy, you know, to some of the stories that our next guest has shared, and so kia koe, Whatanui, no mai, brother.
Thank you, brother.
You're in front of the camera this time, bro, and yeah, like maybe let's just start there, bro. Tuatahiaki, you know, whakamohio mai ki te hunga are mai ana, you know, ko waikoe, bro, and you know, talk a little bit about, you know, your interest in storytelling and media, bro.
Yeah, tēnā koe, brother. Thank you for the invite. It's cool to be here, and I've seen your mahi over the years. I think you posted the other day 250 episodes. That's massive, man, and I admire that. And no doubt you look back at what you did 250 episodes ago and go, oh,
bro, I don't even look at it, brother.
Come a long way since then, but that's what we hope for, you know. But yeah, mihi ana, Haututū Flavell a hope, I tupuake a hau ki Rotorua, taku papa no Ngāti Rangi Wewehi, Ngāpuhi me Ngāti Raukawa, taku mama no te whānau a Panui me Taranaki iwi. Grew up in Rotorua, kura kaupapa Māori, reo Māori katoa taku whānau, and I suppose naturally at kura I was pretty outspoken. I was a bit of a character. I loved the limelight and all that sort of stuff, so naturally lent towards storytelling and being a bit of a performer. And then that sort of just channeled me into, at that time it was a pretty obvious pathway for kura kaupapa kids to come through and be presenters on Whakata Māori.
True.
I had my tuakana at kura Kimo go through the same thing. He was on Ha, he was on IMTV, those types of things. Yes. So it was a perfect avenue because I looked up to my bro.
Yeah.
And
that he was everywhere there, fella. Actually, when you say his name, I just got his picture. Like, yeah, straight up.
He was everywhere, bro. And he was at my tuakana. So I sort of followed that pathway. And yeah, got an opportunity with Whakata Māori really early on, like 17. And then never really enjoyed the stuff in front of the camera, but used the skills that I had over time to tell our stories, and that's what I am most passionate about and continue to do it now.
Yeah, that's awesome, brother. Particularly just around how, you know, it started from an early age, and I guess having that environment, you know, in your guys' whare of just being tūturu Māori, kōrero Māori, and that was just a way of being that perhaps probably helped you to express yourself in the way that you did. And so, you know, when you think about those earlier years, bro, and being in the environment where your papa was in the limelight at that time, and, you know, just you guys living in the way that you guys were, you know, what are some of the earliest memories that you have that I guess you can look back on now?
Bro, like I reflect on this a lot with my siblings, and one of the things that our dad and my mum and dad, both said to us, ahakua hea tāu mahi, hea tō koha ki te iwi Māori. How are you going to give back to te iwi Māori? And whatever avenue you take. And I think when I was a kid, Dad used to go around, this was before he was a politician, he would go around to different hui, and I was his piri pāua. He'd take me with him, bro. And so naturally I got to saw him in his element. I got to see the importance of some of the kaupapa that were going on at that time. And so the care factor was there, because I was literally swamped by it my whole upbringing. Really important people, great orators, and that I think was the thing that grew inside of me. I realized the importance of te reo, tikanga, and all that sort of stuff. Moving into TV, I realized that there were heaps of reo teachers, there were heaps of mātanga reo, heaps of people revitalizing the language by being teachers and going into schools and teaching adults, etc. And I sort of thought, oh, well, how can I contribute to the revitalization of culture, of language, and all those things? And it was through our mahi. Archiving our kōrero, capturing it to ensure that it's never lost. That was my gift back to te iwi Māori, and continues to be. It's still the single most important thing that I think we can do is as Whaturoa, as people who work in film and TV, is to capture kōrero so that it lives on forever.
Yeah, and it's been told by us, eh?
Told by us, changing narratives, bro.
And you know, you said the kupu Whaturoa, we just come off the back of a wānanga that, in my experience, was just hugely transformative and enlightening, and it just made a whole lot of things that I was doing intrinsically or doing things naturally. It just brought it to the surface, and it was just like, holy, yeah, okay, that's why I was doing that. And you know, it was more just e hangai ana ki te ao Māori and a Māori way of looking at things. And there's a huge space for that, I guess, within the space of whether it's content creation or in media, and just really empowering those who are behind the lens or in front of the camera to be able to capture those things in a really good way. And you inspired me, bro, in the first 5 minutes, you know, with your kōrero, and it was really just around how we look around our wharenui, and I'll let you kind of like share this, bro, but, you know, just the significance in storytelling and how media is how we tell and capture stories of today. And so can you kind of like talk us through that in terms of, you know, the importance of it, brother?
Yeah, well, media, old school TV media and the media that we see today is one of the single most important tools that contributes to the revitalization of our language and our culture. There's no doubt about it. As soon as we started to see whakaata Māori, as soon as we started to see wakahuia te karere marae all make their ways onto screen, it was the first opportunity that our people saw themselves in a different light. You know, and that's continued and it's evolved into what we do today. And it's even more important today because more of us have cameras. More of us have the ability to go out and capture kaupapa more than we've ever been able to before. And so the way that I look at it is that media has had a massive impact on the way that Māori are seen throughout the country, both good and bad. Before it was good, it was really, really bad. It shaped the way that Pākehā and Māori saw us as tangata whenua. For Pākehā, it made us look like savages. It made us look like the worst people, the scum of the earth. And that spread like wildfire across the country, and that dictated the way that we were treated. For Māori, we started to believe that in ourselves because we were told it time and time and time again. We started to believe it, and it set itself in our minds. We've always been storytellers. We've had carvings that have depicted that. And then Goldie and Lindauer came in. That was a form of media in its earliest sense. It painted a picture of our tupuna. And we looked at those tupuna, and even today we look at those paintings and we think, that was beautiful. The way that they've been depicted. Photos came in, they determine how we see how we can see the world that our tupuna lived in the mid to late 1800s. And then video started to make its way in. And that captured kōrero, like wakahuia, like koha, like te karere, captured our kōrero and archived it. So those kōrero that we captured all those years ago are still massive taonga. I've seen the documentary. It's on TVNZ. They're only really short bits. I can't remember the name of this series, but it's an insight into the world before kohanga reo was even a thing. Before kura kaupapa was even a thing, before the Māori language petition. So these were Māori living in a world before kura kaupapa, before language revitalization. They didn't even think about language revitalization at that time. And this documentary is a snapshot into that world. And so, you know,
that world, that time.
And then so we look at what we're doing now. We're creating, we're capturing a snapshot into the world that our future mokopuna are going to see. You know, which is insane. And I suppose when we look at that wānanga, the thing that I wanted the most for Tauira to walk away with was not any skills or any new skills or anything like that, because they'll learn that through experience. The one thing that I wanted Tauira to leave with was the understanding of how important the mahi is. Because I think by understanding the importance of the mahi, it changes everything about the intention in which you carry your mahi. Like you say, it's intrinsically in what we do. We grow up, we live in ao Māori. Some of the decisions that we make are naturally done with our instinct of the betterment of te ao Māori in mind. But if we put a focus towards the importance of the mahi, not just now, but historically, the importance of the mahi that we're doing, then all of a sudden we have this weight, this responsibility, which I believe is a really good weight and responsibility to carry. So I suppose that's a really long way of answering that question, bro. But yeah.
But, rongoa nei te Māori, bro, that's the thing. Because sometimes we just pick up a phone or, like go out and capture stuff without kind of really thinking too deeply about things.
Yeah.
And that's because that's what the algorithm wants, And so, like, can we actually just be a bit more intentional and deliberate about what it is that we're putting out? And, for me, being in the content space for some time, kind of get lost in waves of, what is expected of me, but then also just being able to hear kōrero like that just helps me anchor into the groundedness of where is it coming from and just being more true to that rather than what is needed externally. And as you kind of like share that, bro, a memory pops into my mind. And I've had this actually for the time that I've been in social, of being someone who's been in front of the camera, whether it was vegan or was like, Māori who's vegan, like that was very interesting for a lot of people, bro. Or being Māori and talking to other tāne Māori about spirituality, like people have like really kind of like gained some kind of inspiration, or it's created like a sense within their own mind, like, oh, that's not how I thought Māori was. Or so it gave like a different way of looking that, man, there's examples that have been shown that kind of gives you some kind of internalization around how I think about myself as Māori or as the culture. That's shifting massively. And so, as you say, the significance of whether it's these big outlets like Te Karere Marae or even just on your own personal kind of like journey, we are all influential in some way, but what kind of influence do we want to actually put out there?
And that was one of the exercises that I did at the Wānanga, the car exercise.
Yes, bro.
Where we, you asked the question, how much has colonization actually affected us? Because a lot of us, especially my generation who come through kura kaupapa kohangarewa, we don't think that colonization actually hit us. But when you do this exercise, think about a car, any car. You just think, okay, a Toyota Corolla, it's got everything that it needs. 20 years ago, if I was to ask this, the next question, okay, think about a Maori car. The word Māori in front of the car all of a sudden degrades the value of that car.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just the way that 20 years ago when I was at kura, that was just the way that even I, a kid from kura kaupapa who saw the beauty and was showing the beauty in te ao Māori, that was still the way that the world saw Māori. Was that as soon as you attach Māori to the front of a word, it makes it less than everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells me that colonization worked, that it entrenched itself into my mind. But one of the most beautiful things that come out of that wānanga was there was a young girl, the next generation down, she was only really young, 21 or something, and I asked, okay, think of a Māori car, and she goes, Whakahaurua. And I thought to myself, man, but that's the power of what we're doing. We're absolutely rewriting those pictures that we've written into our minds, that have been planted into our minds deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
Because the most harmful thing is the colonization of our minds. As soon as we start turning, as soon as we start losing that belief in ourselves, that's when things become really dangerous.
Mm.
And when Mariana Taua, it's not completely there. It's not completely gone. And we've been able, through the means in which we're talking about, the cameras and media and many other things, kapahaka and the culture renaissance, te reo and all that sort of stuff, we've been able to flip it. Kura kaupapa kohangarewa, we've been able to flip it. And we're raising this generation of Māori who, when you attach the word Māori to something, it makes it way better. We make it ancestral, which is mean.
Yeah.
And that's the power. That's what I wanted to sink into people, is to go, actually, this is the power of what we're doing. And let's not lose sight of that.
Yeah, let's not lose sight of that, because, it can easily be that if you're not intentional and you're not deliberate, or if you're not, being as like proud within yourself first and foremost, because that is going to translate and it is an extension, eh? And so there were so many of us that came from different walks of life into Whaturoa. We had people who were photographers, videographers, we had people behind the screen and agencies, and it was just a really well put wānanga that really gave everyone a taste of everything. But more importantly, it was the sense of connection, bro, ko tahitanga. And, me being in whakatāne, can feel quite isolating, particularly in creative mahi. And so for me, there was something that I kind of like had felt, and I almost wore it like a badge of honor, bro. Like, me, no, I'm out here by myself, I'm going to do it on my own, but that was just something that I told myself, but it didn't need to be that way. And being there around other creatives who share that, it was nice to leave knowing that, man, I'm not alone out here.
Yep.
So can you talk more about that, bro? Just how important it is to be in collaborative spaces and reaching out to people to tautoko the mahi.
The best example of that was the Hīkoi. Well, and the activations leading up to the Hīkoi was, and there was a real conscious effort to reach out to creatives, to photographers, to videographers, to people anyone who had a platform, because we had a message to spread, and we needed everyone on board to spread that message. If you were to ask me, did I think that the Hīkoi was going to be as successful as it was on day one of the Hīkoi? I would have said, oh man, I don't know, because we just didn't know. And all I knew was that it was our duty to put as much content out there so that people could see themselves in it and bring in other creatives who could take their role or take their place in the Hīkoi and amplify that message. And I think this Whaturoa whakaaro has stemmed from that time of the Hīkoi, where we saw hundreds of creatives, Māori creatives and non-Māori creatives who were on board our kaupapa, wanting to come in and find that community. And it was amazing. You go into spaces, you see people over there, and you go, kapai, they've got that area covered. I'll just stick over here. I'll stay here. And so I think that's where it stemmed from. And I think now we're at a point where we want to upskill Māori creatives, because it's all good going out and capturing some mean whakahu, and there are some incredible photographers and videographers out there. Now it's just about putting in that care factor, putting in, for
Quality.
me anyway, it's that narrative side of things. It's about how do we tell our stories in a way using the most impact that we can. And of course, being a storyteller, being someone who's a director, producer, and all that sort of stuff, I'm trying to push narrative. I'm trying to get people to talk to other people, to interview other people, to capture moments in time, as opposed to just reels. That's one of the big pushes that
So it's creating the conversation, rather than something cool to look at. It's like, what is that stimulating in conversation or interactions?
That's right.
Yeah.
So that it has a longer life. There's a thing in TV that is shelf life. How long does that piece of content live on a shelf and still remain relevant? So if there's stuff that an interview, say for example, so there was a crew who went out during the 1975 Land March with Whina. 4 or 5 Pākehā went out and captured the Hīkoi from the beginning to the end. That material is still being used today. In documentaries, you would have seen it in the documentary about the Hīkoi. Moments of that Hīkoi are still relevant today, which means that piece of content still has a relevance and it's still living on the shelf that's still really relevant. We look at some of the stuff that we're making. How long does that stuff last on a shelf? Reels, flash reels, etc. Amazing. Beautiful to look at, and a real mean showcase of the skill that we have. But realistically, that stuff falls off the shelf after essentially the end of that event. And so that's what I'm just trying to push people to. And e hara I te whakaiti I rā tāngata, because they've got way better skills than I ever will have, bro. And there are videographers and photographers that are far beyond the skill level that I have. It's just trying to push that stuff so that, again, it's just the importance of the mahi that we're doing.
Push it a little bit further, and how can you hone in into specific areas, as you say, to have a more stronger shelf life, which equals to more impact, And particularly in the machine of socials, it's just real quick fire. And so, what are you seeing from your TV background? Maybe we can actually just pivot there too, bro. Talk more about your experience. You've been in there since 17 and you've gone into all of these different areas. And then maybe we can move from there into what you're seeing in digital media, because they're the same world under the same umbrella, but operate completely differently. But how can you use that background in the industry to, I guess, inform how we can utilize what's more common these days?
Yeah. I mean, it's been 16 years that I've been in TV, and I've been behind the scenes telling stories for 13, and been really fortunate to have opportunities come my way. And they've opened doors for me to be able to become a director and a producer. Directed multiple different Reo Māori mainly, and everything that I've done has been focused towards Te Ao Māori in some way or another. And when I look at the type of mahi that I've done, it sort of always led me to the place of really wanting to tell really important stories in a long form sense. I've been really lucky.
Like
me and a few
documentary style.
like documentaries, like long documentaries. That's the stuff that really impacts. I believe really impacts. If someone's interested in a kaupapa, they're going to tune into a documentary.
Mm.
And in a documentary, if you hold them for an hour, you've got the ability to completely shift the way that they think.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so, koira te whāinga. I've been really lucky that me and a few others have been really lucky that we have been in that transitional era, where TV was our bread and butter for the most part of it. And in the last 5 years or so, we've started to see a shift in the way that content's been consumed. And we've been able to move those skills of storytelling and stuff within TV and shift them over to the more social stuff.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, it's just a completely different way of seeing things. They reckon the attention span of anyone who's looking at social stuff is like 7 seconds now. So it's like, make content that's relevant and that is exciting. And then if you make it to 7 seconds, after that, it's just hold on, brother. Whereas TV is completely different. You got to slowly warm people in.
Yeah.
Normally, the apex or the climax of your story is about 70% of the way in. So you're building towards that climax. And then it's because you're trying to get people to, again, if they're interested, they're going to stay there.
Yeah.
Whereas social is completely shifted. Not in a bad way. It's just different. The way that we eating, consuming, feeling content is completely different. But you're putting the what do they call it? The hook at the top.
Yeah.
The most controversial thing at the top, whereas in TV, that's giving away your best secret.
Yeah.
You know? But nonetheless, there's huge impact. You can reach numbers that you just wouldn't be able to reach on TV. Again, the Hīkoi was the example of that. What Haututū became during that time of the Hīkoi was a trusted source of information where people would tune in every day just to find out where we were at and how big the Hīkoi was in that area and whether or not they should attend the following day or whatever. And so that has become the channel, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge trust, even like the mahi that you're doing. When you look at your platforms and the people who follow you, they're giving you trust. In a world full of material, in a world full of endless bits of content, from really good content that's really helpful to society and stuff that's not helpful to society at all. There's all this stuff, all these options for people to choose from, and they've decided to follow you and others, but they've decided to put that trust in you. And so that's how I view it. I really value the trust that someone puts in and put into me during the Hīkoi. And so that was my obligation. Put content out as a trusted source of information so that people could watch it and go, kapai, I understand. I'm a little bit clearer now. And I really try, and the stuff that I do, really try and inspire and educate people on things that are really important to me. More recently, in the phase that I'm in my life, it's more kaupapa to do with politics, with te tiriti o waitangi, with changing the way that we see ourselves, with inspiring te ao Māori within us, and just telling really good Māori stories. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
bro, it's just a big thing though in content. Is that was one of the main feels was there is a sense of obligation and accountability to people who do follow us or look to us because of that feeling of trust. You know, and if you've got someone's trust, there is a sense of obligation, but it also gives you responsibility around what kind of mahi you're putting
straight
out
up,
there,
bro.
and which is hugely important, bro. And, you know, we've used the Hīkoi a lot to share whakaaro and answers in our podcast, but it was also a framework that you shared in your workshop at Whaturoa. And so can you talk more about the Hīkoi, bro, and like, I guess, what you guys had learned in terms of what is the narrative? You know, there were stages, like what do we want to show? And then the execution of that, and what were the results, you know, whether it's metrics or whether it was us doing the submissions, you know, because there were so many things that came out of that. But from a creative standpoint, how did the wānanga sort of like work out for you and then the actual playing out of it, bro?
Yeah, so the Hīkoi was like the plan, the media plan for that Hīkoi was really deliberate. We sat together, me and Whaturoa and a few others, many others actually, we sat together and we made a really clear plan about what our objective is. The thing is that 20 years ago there was a 2004 march they didn't have social media. They still had to send pānui out on either the news or on newspaper or just straight up ring
Turn
people.
up. Yeah.
So that was the single most important tool that we had that they didn't have in the past.
Mm.
And so we had to use that. And we were very aware that this is the tool. And we knew this because of those 2 activations that happened before that. You know, the ones around the motu where we stopped traffic and all that sort of stuff. Those were, I suppose, the pilot to see how much impact we could make. And so when it got to the Hīkoi, the example that we used was Humans of New York was the example that we used, because we wanted to show people of all walks of life, people who were tangata tiriti, tangata moana, tangata whenua, big, tall, small, short, young, old. We wanted to show them so that if someone on the other side of the country watched a bit of content that we put out and they saw themselves in the material that we created, that they would feel that they wanted to join the Hīkoi. And so that was very deliberate. And what we saw was it worked. We started to see Pākehā coming on the Hīkoi. And as I say, when the first day of the Hīkoi, we weren't sure how many people were going to show up. When we got to Kaitaia, there were probably about 2,000 people. As we made our way down, we got to Whangarei at the end of the first evening, and there were thousands. I remember the first reel, bro. I remember the night before, sitting in the bed. We just finished the whakatau the night. We had all these wānanga about what the strategy was. Everyone was really nervous, and the wairua up at Pōtahi Pā was crazy. Crazy, full of pride and full of it was like this eeriness. Yeah. We didn't know what it was going to be like, you know. We got to bed at 2:00, and I remember lying there in bed going, far out, what am I even making, bro? Like, am I going to film it as a documentary? Am I going to make social media content? Have I got everything I need? Are my batteries on charge? All that sort of stuff. And I woke up the next morning and got up to Te Rerenga Wairua. It was also the morning that we found out that Rick Mitai passed away. I remember it so vividly. But we just needed to get something out there to show people the Hīkoi had started. I remember the shot. It was of this young fella walking with his ex. He was right up the front of the Hīkoi, and he was just walking towards the camera. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, there's that famous image of Whina with the mokopuna. I just kept thinking to myself, I need to, you know, it needs to be something like that, something that people can resonate with and go, tamariki are here. It's a safe place. Let's go. And that was the beginning of it. And then we saw that explode. Tāmaki was huge. The thing to remember is that traditionally, when it comes to these types of protests, media's never really been our friend. You think back to the 2004 march, they always undermine our numbers. When we show up with 40,000, they're going to say that we had 10,000. And this was no different. But we had the cameras and we could show our own story. If we say 40,000, I've got the cameras and the tools to say there were 40,000 people.
Plus.
And then obviously Hana doing the haka down in Paremata, that escalated it.
That became
all
worldwide.
Of a sudden worldwide. Eyeballs from around the world, indigenous peoples around the world, all of a sudden looking at us. And again, importance. That was Hana at the when we arrived at Pōneke. She says people around the world are relying on us, are looking at us for guidance, because at that point, Māori had the power. Māori were powerful, bro, in that moment. And that's a moment that I'll never forget. You literally got the house that has done all this damage to us, and you got 100,000, 120,000 people outside who are just full of energy. Wairua pai. Yes, there was riri, but wairua pai. And we were so powerful in that moment. And that's what we were aiming to show. And I think that that's what we showed, because it, you know, as a part of the reason why people showed up is because of the mahi that we did.
Yeah, that was a big one, and that sense of seeing themselves in the content, and there's a natural desire of wanting to be a part of that, you know, and it was cool to see all of those different things coming out, you know, with interviews with tangata tiriti, you know, what are their reasons for being there, and just hearing their kōrero, because, you know, a lot of people think that it's just Māori who care about these kinds of things, but man, there are actual people out there who are allies who think the same and have a bit of compassion, you know, so just having that kind of thing shared and being able to show visually, you know, when they said that there was like 40,000, but then you've got their video that was up on, I don't know what street it was, but man, there's just like this endless bloody parade of Māori tangata tiriti who were just walking towards Paremata. And so they were saying this, but it just showed just how false it was when you're looking at the realities of, you know, what you guys were creating. And, you know, like obviously there's a lot of pride for you, but not only were people standing up, but there was the most submissions that have ever been done because of the result of that kind of like layout. And so thinking back on that, bro, like, you know, was that the outcome in terms of getting people to submit, or was it just telling the story in our way?
In our particular instance, the submission is something that ended up coming after. So once the Hīkoi had finished, then all of a sudden it was just, okay, let's get submissions in.
Yeah.
Running wānanga across the motu, that sort of thing. And also documenting that, showing it, and using the Hīkoi, because what the Hīkoi did for me in the platform, obviously there were heaps of things, but one of the big things was that it gave me a platform. So the following from Haututū ended up going from like 4,000 at the first day of the Hīkoi to 20,000 by the end of it. Wow. And all of a sudden you've got this platform, people who are waiting for you to say something. And I know that that's something that everyone with the platform during that time felt the responsibility of. Again, it's that trust. People trust you. They want to be guided in a particular way. And so that's what we ended up doing, pushing people towards submissions, sharing, collabing, doing all of that sort of stuff just to push that message out, because we've got eyeballs now. We've got people who are wanting to listen. And I still think that today, bro. Like, I still think, even though there are so many things happening at the moment politically, and people are feeling so lost, I think we are more politicized than we've ever been. Still, we care about politics, whether it's good, whether it's bad. We care about it more than we ever have. And I think we're just waiting. We're a people waiting to be directed in the right direction. And that's why I have heaps of faith on sort of where we're heading, is because we are now a generation who care deeply about what is happening to us as a people. And yes, things are stuffed up in between, and it's messy, and we still need to sort through all of that. But I think we are a people waiting to be pointed in the right direction. And that's what, tauana taku ngākau.
Bro, and mihi ana kia koutou, you know, the team, you know, the Whaturoa team who actually initiated that, you know, and it's quite interesting how, you know, the Hīkoi was a big moment in terms of politics for Aotearoa, particularly Māori. And then now we're in this kind of like stage where it's just like, hey, like there's a lot of confusion and a lot of whakaaro that is probably bouncing around in circles, and you haven't been shy to be vocal about your stand and I guess what you've been observing, I guess within Te Pāti Māori, where we are in this political climate coming into the end of term and what things are going to look like. So where have your whakaaro, I guess, landed at this point in time, bro, in regards to taking everything into account, but more importantly, where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, I don't really know the inner dealings of what's happening within Te Pāti Māori. And I hope that we get to a point where we can sort that out before the next election. We've got, 6, 7 months until the election. And we need, but what we do know, and what we know for sure, is that when the karanga is put out there, our people show up. And that's the bit that we can, that I know that the skills that I have can really push people towards. And it's going to take a bit of leadership from some of our leaders within Te Ao Māori to ensure that we're heading in the right direction, or making big decisions now. And then it's going, okay, ka pai. And if that doesn't quite work out in this particular election, like, he ua, you know, I think that politically, I don't know where I stand. Again, I'm probably one of those people who are just like, okay, let's just see how things are going to unfold, and then start to commit and start to push people. Never pushing people in which way to vote, because that's all up to the individual. That's their right, and they get to vote however they want. It's just about trying to make sure that the energy and the motivation towards the importance of voting is put out there. And I think that's one thing that I can control, and that's one thing that I'll look to do.
Yeah, awesome, brother. And wanting to kind of like talk more into storytelling, because the other thing within that is like, are there templates that we can follow as creatives, or even with people from like a consumer perspective, bro. Like, what can we do to help really, I guess, niche it down or gain more clarity around what it is that we're putting out, so the consumer or someone is feeling some type of way, so that they can, I guess, make those decisions on their own, but you can, I guess, do your part in creating some kind of whakaaro, planting the seed, I guess, to move them into an action that, might be more aligned to them rather than being in their rangirua state.
So the simple answer to that is that we're really good at doing the why. The what.
Mm-hmm.
We're really good at doing the what. Really good at saying, this is what we're doing, or this is what it is.
Yeah.
What we're not very good at doing is showing the why and why we should care. Right? So it's going, this is the what, and now I'm going to tell you the why. This is why you should care about this product, or this is why you should care about this kaupapa, and trying to peel back those layers so that it's not just surface level, because there's a lot of surface level content out there. It's about going, peel those back. As soon as I start to get a bit of your manawa and I start to feel what you're feeling and why it's important to you, I start to resonate with that, and I go, kapai. I start to care now. And so at a simple level, in its simplest, it's about peeling back those layers, digging a little bit deeper, and trying to get a little bit deeper in terms of your narrative. Yeah. And probably the only other thing to add is just putting a focus to the material that you're getting, not just covering a kaupapa broadly. It's going, kapai, what are some of the themes? What are some of the things that I can lean to within that kaupapa that'll help set it in stone, that'll help put those foundations in for every bit of content that you're creating. And I think the example that I used at the wānanga was te matatini o te kāhui maunga.
Mm-hmm.
Think about matatini, making content for te matatini. I could go around and I could ask people, what's it like being here? This must be mean and all that sort of stuff. But one thing that the people of Taranaki are really known for is that te rangi mārie, te manaakitanga and all those things. So that's a really simple way of going, I'm going to focus on that. So every person I go and talk to, I'm going to ask them about that.
The feeling.
Yeah. How did they make you feel?
Yeah.
What is it about the character of the people of Taranaki? And then that is just a deeper way of looking at story. As opposed to doing, because everyone who goes and does a story about matatini will do a really broad brushstrokes sort of look at it. But you're delving a little bit deeper. You're making a little bit more focused.
That's all narrative, because you got the same picture, but you're using narrative and story and, I guess, communication to actually bring, I guess, the kōrero out that like relates to the picture. Because, like as you say, we can be too abstract.
Straight up.
Be here, there and everywhere. But if we can just hone in on a particular theme, brings a different perspective, which creates more interest.
That's right. And that is like research. It's about doing your homework when you're going into scenarios. Do I know enough about this iwi? Do I know enough about how the pōhiri is going to roll? And am I setting myself up to give myself the best shot at being successful at this kaupapa? And the only way you can do that is by doing your research, by asking people things, by knowing about the takiwa that you're about to go into, knowing where to go, where not to go, those types of things. They are the things that separate you from the rest.
And it's also like one of the other things that you put down is like that Riki is like go into a space, if you want to get familiar with it. It's just doing all of those extras, which is
bro.
Something you kind of highlighted in one of your coho too, just around just putting time into developing the skill and into your craft rather than the sense of instant gratification, that we're kind of accustomed to now. If we can't have it now, then we won't put any energy into it. So talk about that, bro, the development of a skill set and actually just putting in the frickin' time.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things, right, is that especially within like creators, cameras are so good now and the editing software is so good that you can just go buy a camera off the shelf and then you're a mean photographer. Like, because the pictures, and then it might be that you take one mean photo out of 1,000, but you can take 10,000 photos and you got 10 mean photos, and all of a sudden, you only post those on your grid so people see the 10 mean photos. But it's just about, because it's skyrocketed so quickly, the gears are so mean, we've sort of forgotten to do the groundwork. Learning how to frame a shot properly, learning how to light, learning how to assist someone. When in TV, bro, it would be probably 5 years. You might go into a job as an assistant, carrying a tripod around, And you might do that for 5 years before you get your opportunity to operate a camera. And as a director, same thing, is that you have to learn how to do scripting and all that sort of stuff. A little bit different for Māori because there's such a need for Māori directors, etc. But you're doing your time before you actually start to operate, And so that's what I've been big on encouraging, is that we're so quick to want to make a career out of this thing. And yes, there are some people who are incredible, but we're leaving parts of that skill set behind because we're in such a rush. And so, it's just that patience. And it might be old school of me, bro. Like, the reality is it might just be that I come from an old school way of doing things. It might be the TV side of me that's still ringing true. But I still think that there's a lot to be learnt in the space of doing your time, being patient, mentorship, find your mentors, stay close to your mentors and let them teach you skills. Be bold, be brave, do your time. Don't worry about making a shitload of money straight away. That'll come. It'll come over time.
And that's aligning to what that can open up to, because one of the biggest barriers or challenges as a creative or putting energy into this, and I'll speak to myself, is how the pūtea isn't as consistent as we think it is. But putting energy into something and honing the craft, it can shift you from earning at this capacity to a different kind of like level. So like, can you talk about that, bro, as like one of the biggest challenges as creatives or Whaturoa, and how we can actually, position ourselves better to not only hone our craft and get better at the skills, but what that actually looks like in terms of creating some kind of security financially from it too.
If I go out and I do something for free, I should never see that as, I'm just doing that for free, it's a waste of my time, etc. It's learnings. You are fine-tuning your craft. You are having more time to perfect your craft so that I can walk into any situation and I can say, this is what I'm going to create. And I know for sure that when I leave that place, I'm going to create that. In terms of creating sustainability in the financial situation, by doing all those reps and by proving to people that you can deliver on this, and it might be that you have to take a bit of a cut. That you have to take a couple of gigs where you don't get paid as much as you would like. That what that does is that it's your craft, you'll learn, because there's only so much you can take photos of your children and your wife and before they start to get ho-ha of you, or you're wanting the next challenge. The difference between going out and capturing an event as a normal event and making some cool reels and taking some photos, and actually telling the story and making a proper media campaign where you're talking about the importance of that story, where those people can take the content that you've created and it be something that, say, they pitch for pūtea in years to come or whatever, is huge in the way that pūtea is given to the creator, but also huge in terms of the value of the mahi that you're creating. And I think we're so caught up in filming an event here and capturing it, which is cool, because you get paid a shitload of money for a day's work, whereas over here, it might take a little bit longer, but the value of that mahi is actually the thing that is going to give you long-term success. That's what, from my own experience anyway. I prefer to take on gigs that are going to be a little bit more long-term.
But that requires more.
As opposed to doing the odd gig, like weddings and all that sort of stuff. They just don't hit for me. They just don't do it for me because there's less importance towards what we were talking about.
The why, Yeah, man. It's cool how everything like comes down from like that main mission and that main way of looking at things. And, that's something that you mentioned with me is, just honing in on my skill, but also the difference between something that comes naturally to me is being able to communicate and present, and is that a gap that you're seeing within the space as creatives, is that there is such a comfort, for a lot of people to be behind the camera as opposed to being in front of the camera. And so what are some of the things that you're noticing within that, bro? Because, man, there's so many of our whānau who are just so completely comfortable, but the minute that they're in front, bro, they just feel so uncomfortable and would rather not. So what are you seeing in regards to that, bro? Is that just the introvert creator thing or like?
Probably, bro.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they're behind the camera. And Māori generally like the arts and crafts and stuff. And this is a modern day version of whakairo, etc. And so they're wanting to sink their teeth into that sort of stuff. I know people who sit on a really long lens way at the back of the room and even just walking to the front of the crowd and taking photos at the front of the crowd is too much for them.
Yeah.
Whereas the way that I've been taught is way different, bro. Get right up in
right
front
in
of
there.
people because that's where the gold is. You ask people questions when they're right up the front. I remember a memory that I have was during the Hīkoi when Tiriti Nui came on, joined the Hīkoi. And all the cameramen sort of left because they were like, oh no, it's too tapu or whatever, which, you know, but I was ballsy and I got right up and I got this awesome photo of her. But you know, it's, and then talking about sort of the people putting themselves in front, you're way more open to criticism.
Mm-hmm. True.
You've got all these people watching you from all walks of life, and they can hide behind their keyboards. That's the reality of it. People often have phases of being in front of the camera. They have a phase where things are good and then they start getting criticized, especially recently. That's one thing that I've been seeing real, like a real poison that's making its way into Māori is that we're so quick to criticize people, criticize their vision and what they're trying to achieve, even though that intention is always really good.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a reason.
Yeah.
Could be a reason is that there's a fear of being judged, a fear of the criticism. No one likes to be criticized, bro.
Yeah.
And by putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself out for criticism. I've just been doing a show with my sister and just been I've really admired the way that she's opened up and shared her story about what has been a really difficult time. Mm-hmm. Knowing that there's going to be criticism, knowing that there's going to be some questions asked, but at least she's taking control of that narrative and she's the one sharing it, as opposed to other people making up their own assumptions about her. She's the one that's taking control of that narrative and going, this is what I did, this is why I did it, and these are the outcomes. And so that's one thing that I've been really admiring of my own sister lately.
Bro, she's tough, man. She's so strong and, man, she's always going to, like, be to what she thinks, and that's something that I feel a lot of people can probably feel from the outset, and even more so if you're in those inner circles. And I guess seeing that, man, that's just the way, you know, not in a bad way, but that's just like who she is at her core. And if she's got something on her mind, man, get out of the way, bro. You're either in the way or
bro, straight up. We all like that.
But and that's another great thing is like, you know, look at, you know, your whānau is like, man, you fellas are doing really well in your guys' respective fields. And that's something that I mentioned, you know, when I was dying on our run is it's just like, you know, it's probably something that your mātua can, you know, look at and be like, far proud as, or you look to your siblings and, you know, you fellas can just be proud of each other and like that feeling of hononga and whanaungatanga. And so speak more about that, bro. We're coming towards the end anyway, just around how you're in your mahi, bro. You've been putting in the yards. You've had great examples, you know, with mama and papa, and then you look to your sides and you see your siblings and, you know, you fellas are helping each other out. And like, what are you seeing in regards to that, bro, or feeling in regards to that?
It's just the way, like, really fortunate with the way that we were raised, bro. I had a dad who spent every minute, every second of the day trying to think about how he could help Te Ao Māori. And he worked his ass off. You know, like almost unhealthy relationship with work.
True.
In a sense that that's what we were brought up with. Is that he, and still does, he still works, even when we're together as a whānau, he's still in his office doing a bit of mahi and stuff. And I'm like, bro, get off there, man. We hardly ever spend time together.
Yeah.
But naturally, that has come down to all of us.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think is really important that my parents have instilled in us, is the sense that everything is an opportunity and that nothing is impossible. Like, it sounds real cliche, but we weren't spoiled as kids. There were 5 of us, and Dad was really the only one. Mum did a little bit of mahi, but Dad was the breadwinner, and we weren't spoiled in terms of taonga, etc. But if we had something on our mind, or if we showed a particular interest in something, they would go all in. They would go, Kapai, you're pretty good at swimming and you enjoy it. Let's go there. That was me, swimming. Every morning, I trained 10 times a week. Morning, night. I had Wednesday Arvos off. and then I trained Saturday mornings. That's how handy. Media, she wanted to be an actress. Yeah. So they sent her to drama school down in Christchurch. Same with my tangiroa, my sister, basketball.
Yeah.
That was her thing. My older sister, wanted to be a doctor. They spend a lot of time, science, maths, the things that you needed to become a doctor. And then same with my brother. He felt the sense that he needed to get away from the lifestyle that we were living. They sent him to boarding school. And so it was the installment of, if you stuff up, it's all good. We got you.
Yeah.
We'll take care of you. Nothing is a leap too far, because if you stuff up, kei te pai, we'll look at the next opportunity. And I think that has been instilled in all of us, that we go into situations, bro, and sometimes we say things that people don't want to hear because we're so not afraid of stuffing up that we'll just go and do it, you know? And I think about that with media and her rebranding of Hine. It's just this bold whakaaro. If I stuff up, kei te pai, I'll figure it out. Well, we've got the means to figure it out. We've got the mentality to figure it out. And so I think that is the one thing, and also having great examples of people who are so dedicated to te ao Māori. That's my dad with politics and stuff. But my mum is honestly the most clever, the smartest person I know.
Yeah.
She is so onto it, and she's never in the limelight. She's always taking that step back because dad's always the one up the front. But having those role models, if I look at my role models in my life, who are the biggest, at the top is my dad for males, and at the top is my mum for females.
Yeah.
And I think that's the simplest way. I absolutely admire and look up to everything that my parents do. Yeah.
That's no doubt giving you a lot of inspiration for you as a papa now, bro, and, building your own whānau. But how has that, translated into, your own relationships, whether it's your hoa, the people that you've been able to connect to in the industry, because you've been able to tell some real in-depth stories of, some real toki in our world. And so, how has that kind of āhua or inspiration of being modelled around whakawhanaungatanga or building these relationships, what can you speak to in regards to that, bro, because of how important that is?
Yeah. Well, if you had to ask me this question 10 years ago, I would have said, no, my dad didn't help me get into some of the positions, but I've come a long way since 10 years ago, and I'm humble enough to say, I do think that having relationships and having those relationships with these people through my parents, but I think they probably see a lot of me or a lot of them inside me.
You.
And so that opens up a lot of those opportunities and stuff. And I don't take those for granted. These relationships are built on years and years of commitment towards a kaupapa. And I just see myself as a continuation of that.
Yeah.
Because I align with them in so many ways. So I definitely think it has been a huge part of me growing over the years. And I think what we're doing now is creating that next level of relationships. Your kids and my kids in the years to come will do the same thing. And all we're doing is setting our kids up.
Yeah.
We're setting our mokopuna up for success.
Yeah. So it's mean to be able to look at the lens of gratitude now, rather than, I do it all myself.
That was me. I was like, I didn't need my dad to help me. Now I'm like, I probably think I walk into a room and the first thing Timothy says to me is, hey, behato papa. I'm like, okay, yeah, sweet. That's
relational, brother. And it's, in your space, bro, in our space, I should say, is burnout and fatigue is a huge thing within mahi life, or even just in anyone who's passionate about mahi or what they do. But that's a common thing that people reach at some point. And so how do you manage that, bro? Or do you manage that? Or what are your things that I guess tautoko you in creating sustainability and output, but also balance with whānau, brother?
So one of the byproducts of seeing my parents the way that they were when I was growing up is that my relationship with mahi became kind of toxic, and that I wanted to work every hour of the day. I'd go home, I'd go to work 9 to 5, I'd come home and I'd work at home. And I started to feel really sorry for my kids because I was like, they from 3 to 9 are their hours. That's the hours where dad's supposed to be present. And here I am working on my computer, sending emails or editing something that I want to see. And so 2 years ago, It was actually after a Christmas where I saw my whānau were together. We hadn't been together for 6 months. And then I saw my parents, my siblings, we were all working.
During Christmas break.
During Christmas break on our laptop. Bearing in mind, you got 2 business owners, you got a doctor, my dad does his mahi, my mum's a doctor. And so you've got all these people who have their own interests of mahi. And I thought to myself, I don't want that to continue, that relationship with work. And so it was 2 years ago, beginning of last year, I made the call that I will not work at home from 3 until my kids go to bed. And if I have anything that's important enough, by 10 o'clock, I'm pretty hashed, I'm pretty done. If it's important enough, I'll pick up my laptop and I'll do it then. And it's just creating that relationship with me so that when I'm at home with my kids, they're the only thing that settles me, and running. They're the only 2 things that sort of settle me and allow me to regulate and allow me to take a break from mahi. I want them to know that that time between 3 and 9 p.m. at night is Papa's time. Is time with Papa, sorry. So yeah, that's kind of the only thing. There are times where I have to take a reality check. We're not saving lives, making the stuff that we're doing. We're changing people's opinions, you know?
Holy shit, bro, that fucking hit.
Yeah. We're changing people's opinions, and you could argue, if you argued really hard, that we are changing people's lives because we're changing people's opinions. But
it's not life or death in the
it's
media.
not life or death, and I don't have to get a reel out at a particular time. It's not going to save anyone.
It's our own expectations of certain things and how much we care about what we're doing more than anything else. So everything else that we say is like, nah, that's not really the reason. The real reason is just how you feel about what you want to do and the expectation you put out.
And my missus will probably watch this and go, "Hey, you're shit. You still work too hard, and you're the worst at it." So what that tells me is that it's a work in progress, bro. I'm not perfect at it. I care a lot about the mahi that I do, and I'm so passionate about the mahi that I do that sometimes I feel that I have to keep going until it's done. But I have some cool people around me who check me, you know. My missus is one. My workmates are another. They just say, hey, it doesn't actually matter. You can do that tomorrow. You can go home. And then the last thing is I bought a boat, bro. So now I just think about fishing.
Mean, brother. Well, at least you're creating like spaces for you to whakatā, you know, and that's something that I've really looked at more so intentionally like this year, is just creating those boundaries, you know, with mahi, and, you know, because there's so many other things that are important to me outside of mahi, and that's hauora, that's in my whānau. And so how can I like systemize my days, or how can I structure my weeks so that I can really look after all of these different areas that mean the most to me, which prevents, I guess, getting to those points of burnout. But as I'm talking to you, bro, I'm at the kind of like early stages of noticing that, you know, and so for me, it's just, I guess, noticing that and now being able to kind of like let go of where I think or what I'm doing, and just like, okay, let me just give back to these other areas, give back to my whānau, give back to my wahine, and just recoup and then recharge and then get ready to go again.
Hard, bro. And then sometimes they come in waves, you know, phases. Let's go, okay, it's going to be hard for a month. And then after that, I'll be clear, you know? And that's how I sort of look at, sometimes
seasonal in the over bigger span, rather than on a day or week.
Hard,
it's like, bro. Open it up a bit.
It might get hard, and you might have to work your ass off for a month, and then after that, you reap the rewards. You know, you start to go, okay, kapai, it's going to ease off, and then I can start to do things differently. You know, might be a bit of a sacrifice talking to my partner. Hey, it's going to be really hard the next month. I'm just going to work my ass off and really try and get it to a point where we're good. And then after that, we can relax.
Mean, bro. Lastly, bro, the thing that I think will be cool to talk about, I don't know if you can talk about it, but about the Hīkoi documentary. You know, we're able to get a bit of a preview, and far out. You know, there were tears shed from a lot of the whānau, and there was a lot of pride, you know, in what we saw on the screen. So talk a little bit about that, bro, and what can people expect in regards to this body of work that you've poured into, bro?
Yeah, so one of the things that I did, using the skills that I had at that time, during the Hīkoi, I thought, okay, I'm going to make social media stuff for Haututū, but I'm also going to film it for a documentary. And
potential of a documentary.
Well, yeah, at that time there was no money or anything like that. I didn't even know what it. But what I thought about were those Pākehā guys who filmed the 75 march.
Yeah.
That was at the back of my mind. That sacrifice back then to go out and capture this thing. I was like, bro, I've made documentaries about marches, about Ihu Mātau, about the 2004 march. Here's a hīkoi that's right in front of me, and I don't, I have to put, the money where the mouth is, and go and capture that. So I did. And then that's eventuated into a documentary, which is supposed to be released end of April, hopefully. And it's the side of the hīkoi that I suppose, especially with Eru and everything that's sort of unfolded over the last sort of 9 months, showing the genuine nature of Eru. I was in the car with him as he was travelling across the motu, making our way down the hīkoi, down the country during the hīkoi, showing the side to him that shows how much he cares, how deeply he cares about that kaupapa. And it's an hour long. I shot it, I directed it, I produced it, and I'm just stoked that it has the opportunity to make it out. People don't realize how much work goes into a documentary piece like that. Kimi came out and put her trailer out about the Tipene doco yesterday. And I messaged her, I said, congratulations. A lot of people don't realize how much work, how much pain goes into making a documentary like that. And although it's probably the last thing you want to do is watch it again, remember that there are thousands of people out there who will watch it for the first time and absolutely love what you do. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Oh, very well. That's why a few people were getting up and giving you a mihi, and you're like, man, I've watched this 1,000 times at the whānau, so I'm going to leave the room. But everyone was giving up and giving you the mihi, and you were quick to get up and, hey, I didn't show you this for me to get the mihi. I got up and, wanted to just share everything, and it was a really great way to, I guess, complete the wānanga, because we had been in it for a few days and we had learned all of these things, and we saw it visually. We saw everything that we had been taught, which was awesome for us who were present at the wānanga to be like, okay, there is this obligation, there is this responsibility, but there is a real way to make impact based on our natural, interest. And so, to receive all of that and to come away from that wānanga and saying, he Whaturoa hau, that just feels really, really strong, bro, just like, not only are we doing that, but man, we do belong to a part of a collective that has really, really important mahi. And so just want to pass it over to you, brother, if you have any final whakaaro, whether it's around storytelling, whether it's around anything else that is on your manawa or whakaaro. Just to finish us off with that, brother.
Again, I've said it multiple times. We are in a continuum. We are the continuation of the amount of mahi that's been put in before us. And it wouldn't be right of us, a generation who are re-indigenized, a generation who see the world completely different to the way that our parents saw the world. It wouldn't be right of us not to carry that kōrero on, because I think this next generation of tamariki who are coming out see the world beautifully. But that's not the end. We're still in this continuum, and we need to continue to grow. We often look at the next generation and think, ka pai kua ea, kua ea te wawata. But I think there's still such a long way to go in terms of moving it back into communities, moving these stories back into communities, capturing as many angles of the story as we can. And we're righting the wrongs that have been told about us. We no longer see ourselves Māori as this rugged, dark-skinned people. We're starting to see ourselves as rangatira. When I talk to my boy about who his biggest idols are, he'll say Eru Kapakingi. And then, no lie, I was driving yesterday and Lou and Stan drove past us, and they were pulling into McDonald's, admittedly. They put their window down, and Whatu, my boy, bro, was just like, what the hell? That's Stan. So we're changing the way that we see ourselves, bro, and that's what I'm most proud of. And I think we just got a big mission ahead of us to continue that.
Man, and we're all a part of it, we're all a part of it, and, really enjoy that whole sense of whakaaro, because the way we see ourselves is hugely important in how we behave and what we do. And if we can flip the script, then sometimes we don't even think that we are feeling some type of way or have a belief, but when we have more visual representation of rangatiratanga, you know, of positivity, man, it helps you to see like how you've been holding yourself back. And it is those deep whakaaro of like, man, I shouldn't be proud or I'm not enough.
Yeah,
but seeing that in terms of like, we've got the stands, we've got the eru kapakingis, and we've got people behind the cameras who are telling these stories that are really inspiring a lot of us. And I feel inspired, bro. And it's really added so much more to how I'm thinking, how I'm operating, more particularly how important my mahi is, bro. Yeah. So, you know, mihi ana kia koe, it was because of you that I was able to attend Whaturoa, bro. So mihi ana kia Haututū Creatives for the koha, but also for bringing them some of those akoranga, as well as your passion, so the people who are watching, who are creatives, can, I guess, find the significance and importance in what it is that they're doing. So to you, brother, mihi ana kia koe, and to everyone who's tuned in, follow Haututū Creatives and share a highlight below, like, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Chee! Che mai, bro. Che mai. Oits!